Welcome back. In the previous lessons, we covered the different phases of Honor of Kings. Now it's time to see how each role applies those concepts in real games, starting with the role that connects the entire map, the roam. As a roam main myself, this is also the role I know best, so it felt like the right place to start the series. Whether you're completely new to the role or already have experience playing roam, this guide is built to help you develop stronger game sense and understand how a great roam controls vision, rotations, objectives, and the rhythm of the whole game. Let's get started. Roam has always been one of the easiest roles to pick up. Unlike every other role, a roam isn't designed to carry through gold or mechanics alone. Instead, a roam amplifies the value of everyone else on the team. Think of a supportive partner. They may not be the one earning the income directly, but by preparing meals, offering emotional support, handling responsibilities, or simply giving you the space to focus on your work, they help you perform at your best. Their value isn't measured by what they accomplish alone. It's measured by how much they help someone else succeed. A roam works the same way. Your job isn't to become the strongest player on the map. Your job is to make the right teammate stronger at the right time. That's why a roam's impact depends much more on the people around them than any other role does. If your teammates consistently make good decisions, every bit of vision, protection, and setup you provide becomes even more valuable. But if no one converts those advantages into objectives, your impact naturally becomes much harder to see. That's also why roam performance scales so differently across skill levels. One of the basic concepts every roam player should know: single-focus rhythm and multi-focus rhythm. Some roams naturally play around a single win condition. They pour almost all of their resources into one lane or one carry, making sure that player gets ahead and stays ahead. As long as that carry performs well, your decisions stay simple. This is single-focus rhythm, the easiest way to play roam. Most roam heroes, however, aren't limited to supporting just one teammate. Instead, they constantly shift their attention between lanes, helping whichever part of the map has the greatest opportunity at that moment. Sometimes that means assisting the jungler during an invade. Sometimes it's helping mid secure lane priority. Other times it's protecting the marksman or rotating to set up an objective. This is multi-focus rhythm. Instead of committing to one carry, you're constantly reading the state of the entire map and deciding where your presence creates the most value. Because of that, multi-focus rhythm has a much higher ceiling, but it also demands far better map awareness, game sense, and decision-making. Once you understand the difference between these two playstyles, improving as a roam becomes much more straightforward. The rest of this guide is about learning to recognize those situations and make the right call consistently. Let's move on to the actual in-game playstyles. The first few minutes of the game decide who controls the early tempo. As a roam player, your very first decision is simple. Where should you open? In most games, the default answer is mid-open because it's the most flexible opening available. Mid-open splits into two situations. Your mid has lane priority, and your mid doesn't. If your mid laner has lane priority, use that advantage immediately. By clearing the wave first, both you and your mid laner earn the freedom to move before the enemy does. You can pressure both side lanes, scout the enemy jungler, secure river vision, or support your own jungler if an early fight breaks out. Because mid sits at the center of the map, controlling mid usually means controlling the game's early tempo. Sometimes, though, your mid won't have lane priority. That isn't always because your mid hero is weaker. Often it's because the enemy roam has stronger early wave clear and helps their mid clear the first wave faster. As a result, the enemy mid gets priority first and moves before you do. In these situations, don't force a fight over river control. Instead, rotate early to gather information. Track the enemy jungler's opening path. Protect your own jungle entrances. Warn your side lanes before a gank happens. Even if your mid temporarily loses priority, good information can still keep your team from falling behind. Sometimes vision is worth more than forcing a losing fight. Mid-open works in almost every draft because it keeps your options open while protecting your team's early rhythm. That said, it's not always the strongest opening. Sometimes creating pressure from a side lane is even more valuable. Instead of opening through mid, the roam starts from either the farm lane or, in certain matchups, the clash lane. The goal isn't simply to win the lane. The goal is to create an early numbers advantage where your team has the highest chance of snowballing. Before choosing this opening, 3 conditions should already be true. First, your mid laner needs enough lane priority to manage the lane alone. Second, your jungler needs to be able to handle the early jungle matchup without immediate help. Third, your side lane needs enough pressure to actually turn the extra player into an advantage. When all 3 conditions are met, side lane open often creates a stronger early lead than mid open. If the enemy roam stays in mid while you open from the side lane, don't rush to clear the wave right away. Instead, pressure the enemy marksman away from the minion wave. Force them to miss at least one last hit before clearing the lane. After that, secure the Firehawk. Even a single denied minion combined with the Firehawk gives your entire team an early gold and experience advantage. That's often more valuable than simply matching the enemy roam in mid. Some teams also run side lane open from the clash lane. Since most players expect the roam to appear around mid or the farm lane, opening from the clash lane can catch the enemy off guard and sometimes sets up an early first blood. The opening itself isn't what matters. What matters is whether your team can actually convert that surprise into an advantage. A common question: does an opening from a side lane leave your jungle exposed? Not necessarily. During the first 4 minutes, jungle monsters are protected by the early jungle protection system, which reduces the damage enemy heroes deal to your camps. Because of that, simply having one fewer teammate nearby usually isn't enough for the enemy to steal your jungle. In most cases, your jungler should still go ahead and secure the camp. During the first 4 minutes, that protection system significantly cuts the damage enemy heroes deal to your camps, so even invade specialists aren't guaranteed to steal your first buff. Take Wukong, for example. His second skill executes jungle monsters below 15% HP, but 15% of the first buff's health is only around 1,350 damage, while Smite alone deals 1,500 true damage. As long as your jungler times Smite correctly, they still have the stronger secure. Jing is another common example. Her reflection can also cast Smite, letting her secure a camp with roughly 150% Smite damage when timed correctly. But to pull that off, both Jing and her reflection need to enter your jungle together and fully commit to the invade. Before level 4, Jing is fairly vulnerable, so if your mid has lane priority, they can rotate in and punish her immediately. Even if she secures the buff, escaping afterward is far from guaranteed. That's why simply opening from a side lane doesn't automatically mean your jungle is unsafe. If the conditions for side lane open are met, losing the first buff is usually a matter of execution or decision-making rather than a flaw in the roam's opening. If your mid has lane priority, they can rotate in and punish that invade immediately. So if all the conditions for side lane open are already met and your jungler still loses the camp purely because of Smite timing or execution, that isn't a failure of the roam's opening. It's an execution mistake. One final adjustment: jungle pathing. Whenever the roam opens from one side of the map, the opposite side naturally becomes more vulnerable. To reduce that risk, your jungler should usually start their clear on the opposite side. That way, as both players rotate, they naturally meet near the lane your team intends to pressure. The roam creates the pressure. The jungler arrives to convert it. Neither mid open nor side lane open is always correct. Mid open gives your team the greatest flexibility. Side lane open gives your team stronger early lane pressure. Choosing the right opening depends on your draft, your lane priority, your jungler's matchup, and where your team has the best chance to snowball. Understanding these opening principles is the first step. The next step is learning how high-level roam players apply them in real matches. AG versus KSG. Both sides have strong, sustain-heavy junglers, and both mid laners clear waves fast. When a roam opens from a side lane, the jungler starts on the opposite side of the map. Without the roam nearby, the jungle on that side becomes much darker, making it significantly more vulnerable to an invade. Starting on the opposite side minimizes that risk. But AG takes a different approach. Instead of starting on the opposite side, AG's jungler starts on the bottom side, clearing the red buff first. The enemy roam checks our red buff, while their jungler walks through mid to scout AG's blue side. Notice something else. AG's mid laner doesn't clear the first wave right away. Instead, they hold inside the brush to provide vision. This tells us AG is already treating early information as more valuable than a few seconds of wave clear. So here's a question. Imagine the enemy decides to invade your blue buff. What would you do? A. Rotate back and defend your blue buff. B. Counter-invade the enemy's blue buff instead. Pause the video if you want to think about it. The correct answer is B. By the time you arrive, your blue buff will usually already be dead. Even worse, if you try to fight over it, your own skills often end up helping the enemy finish the camp faster. Instead of chasing a losing fight, immediately trade objectives. Since both your roam and marksman are already on the farm lane side, invading the enemy's blue buff keeps your own rhythm going instead of following theirs. Don't follow the enemy's rhythm. Create your own. Gaia versus Arlie. Normally Gaia wins this matchup against Arlie. Dolia's presence temporarily tilts it back in Arlie's favor, which is enough to force the enemy roam toward the farm lane. Once the enemy roam arrives, the matchup swings back. Gaia regains lane priority. At this point, back off. Don't panic if you lose the Firehawk. Without lane priority, neutral resources naturally belong to the stronger side. One small mechanic a lot of roam players overlook. Don't be afraid to last hit minions. As long as an ally is nearby, your roam item still gives them the last hit bonus even if you land the final hit yourself. Clearing the wave faster is usually far more valuable than tiptoeing around the minions. The enemy may also try to steal your bilateral resource. Don't panic. Early jungle protection significantly reduces the enemy's damage to neutral monsters. Your first priority should always be clearing the minion wave. Minions are worth more gold, especially with the last hit secured. Only contest the bilateral resource after the wave is dealt with. Without lane priority, The bilateral resource should normally belong to the enemy. So if you still come away with it, they're actually the ones losing value. This is called a wave freeze. By keeping the wave outside your tower instead of pushing it in, the enemy marksman has to walk much further forward just to collect last hits. That makes them vulnerable to ganks and limits how aggressively they can play. More importantly, it forces the enemy roam to stay and protect them. Instead of rotating around the map, they're locked into a single focus rhythm, supporting only one lane. Meanwhile, your roam is free to play multi-focus rhythm, creating value across the map. Watch the next fight. The enemy roam has much better mobility, but they still arrive late because they're still dealing with the frozen wave. The fight is a straight 3 versus 3, but our team reaches the spot first simply because we control the wave better. A good roam should always know their jungler's rotation. Why? Because you want to maximize gold sharing. Whenever possible, let the roam and jungler clear lane minions together. The roam item removes the jungle penalty, so the jungler still gets full lane gold. That said, stopping to clear a wave also delays the next jungle camp. That's why the roam immediately helps the jungler clear the following camp, restoring the tempo that was briefly lost. After sharing the lane gold, our marksman returns to catch the next wave. The enemy roam is visible in mid, and our marksman still has the red buff, so the 1v1 matchup is completely safe. So where should the roam go next? That depends on your jungler. If they want to invade the enemy jungle, go with them. If they want to speed up their own clear, help them finish the camp faster. Since the marksman is already safe, your priority shifts to maintaining the jungler's tempo. Now look at the clash lane. The Space Spirit is still up. Notice the roam doesn't fully rotate top. They simply hold position in the river. From here they provide vision, protect nearby teammates, and stay close enough to respond immediately if a fight breaks out. If nothing happens, they just rotate back. Fully committing without a guaranteed fight only wastes time. Good positioning is about staying close enough to react, without sacrificing your own tempo. Everything we've covered so far has been about small tempo checkpoints, winning a lane trade, securing vision, speeding up a jungle clear, or forcing the enemy roam to stay in lane. But now we're approaching the first major tempo checkpoint of the game, the 4-minute Tyrant fight. And just like we discussed in the timeline chapter, objective fights don't begin when the objective spawns, they begin before it spawns. Watch the wave. There's another small detail here. Notice how the marksman attacks both the minion wave and the nearby jungle camp at the same time. The goal isn't to clear the wave faster, it's to delay the wave while staying productive. Instead of standing idle waiting for the next last hit, those spare moments go toward chipping away at the nearby jungle camp without breaking the freeze. By delaying the wave, your own minions survive just long enough for the enemy wave to slowly whittle them down. This buys you time to secure last hits on the enemy minions, while forcing your opponent to constantly fight for last hits on theirs. If they don't step up in time, they lose that bonus gold. If they do step forward, they walk straight into your trading range, giving you a chance to punish them. Small optimizations like this add up to a consistent gold advantage over the course of a game. The moment Dolia spots the enemy roamer near mid, the farm lane immediately knows they're safe to pressure aggressively. Information creates confidence. Because they know where the enemy team is, they can comfortably play the lane 2 versus 1. Watch how Dolia constantly pokes forward. The goal isn't to kill the enemy marksman, it's to make them too afraid to walk up and clear the wave. As long as the enemy marksman stays away, they arrive late to the Tyrant fight. Without realizing it, AG has already created a numbers advantage before the fight even begins. Landing Dolia's blessing before the ultimate extends the lock-on range, letting the ultimate reset connect much more reliably. Small hero-specific micro like this dramatically increases your consistency in teamfights. Now look at the enemy formation. Their marksman is still clearing the wave under tower because we've been delaying it, while their frontline is already committed. The formation is completely split apart. Even though AG has already committed one ultimate, the fight is still heavily favored, because the enemy simply can't fight as 5. This is why positioning and wave control matter so much more than raw mechanics. Finally, this entire sequence loops back to one of the most important concepts from Chapter 1, multi-focus rhythm. Throughout these 4 minutes, the roam never stayed glued to a single teammate. They helped the side lane, accelerated the jungler's tempo, covered mid-controlled vision, prepared the Tyrant setup, and finally enabled the team fight. Every rotation increased someone else's value. That's the true strength of multi-focus rhythm. Even on a roam hero without overwhelming crowd control or damage, good decision-making lets your team control the map, control the objective, and ultimately control the fight. Objective and vision fundamentals. The neutral buff boss objective also depends entirely on teammate tempo. When both jungle halves are up, taking them is the highest priority. By clearing the mid wave first, we force the enemy to deal with it before they can farm their jungle. After mid pushed, the mid laner helps the jungler secure the blue buff, while the marksman takes the red buff. Should we help the marksman clear the farm lane? Not yet. We already know their next route. After taking the red buff, the marksman rotates back through mid. Our job as the roam is to secure that route before they arrive. We move ahead, control the brushes, and set up vision along the path they'll take. If the enemy tries to contest this area, we'll spot them immediately, and pushing us out usually takes multiple players. That information also tells our teammates that fewer enemies are available elsewhere on the map. Once the marksman finishes the red buff, we keep moving ahead of them, securing every brush and vision point along their rotation so they can reach the next objective safely without losing tempo. Vision really isn't complicated once it clicks. A roam who can't get vision usually just doesn't understand where the enemy actually is. Once you do, the right move becomes obvious. Let's look at another example, this time playing Deqiao. The first two waves already tell us a lot. The enemy marksman-roam duo is much stronger in lane, so they'll usually dodge the matchup by swapping to the clash lane early. Because of that, we can rotate with Gaia to mid first, then look for the enemy duo on the next wave and punish the lane swap. This kind of read really only shows up in professional play, so you don't need to copy it in ranked. Now watch this rotation from mid toward the clash lane. Does anything feel off? It's the same concept as before. You need to understand what your teammate actually needs. Right now, Gaia is rotating to the farm lane. What she needs isn't more damage. She needs a safe route. We enter the brush first and immediately spot the enemy marksman separated from their roam. After landing skill 1, we keep moving through the brush, keep pressuring the marksman, and maintain vision. A lot of players are afraid to do this on squishy roams because they don't know when it's actually safe. Right now, we outnumber the enemy. In situations like this, the roam should be the first one to step forward and trade HP, not wait for the carry to get engaged first. That's the basic condition for checking brushes. If your nearby teammates outnumber the enemy, you can safely face check with your own body. Don't hesitate. If you don't check the brush, are you expecting your marksman to do it instead? Now look at this next situation. A lot of roams think that as long as they're providing vision, they're doing their job. But a lot of that vision ends up being unnecessary. Lady Sun has already used her first skill. Instead of standing here, Deqiao should keep poking while also picking up the experience from the front minion. Holding this position does have value. It lets you watch for a possible mid lane rotation. But Deqiao reaching level 4 is extremely important. Most roams should hit level 4 before 240. In this game, Deqiao didn't reach level 4 until after 250 because she missed too many waves setting up vision that wasn't actually needed. Now think about the next tempo point. Use your camera to check mid. The enemy mid laner is holding the wave, waiting for their jungler to arrive. This delays our own jungler's tempo too. To break this setup, force the enemy mid back and push the wave into the tower. Also remember what we talked about earlier. Whenever the enemy jungler shows up in lane, ask yourself one question. Does the jungle tempo slow down? Here it's obvious. The jungler skipped a small camp just to get here sooner, which means both our mid laner and our jungler need to recover tempo. As the roam, you have two options. Help the mid lane directly, or speed up your jungler first and rotate to mid together. Both are correct. Now look at what Deqiao actually does. She stays beside Goya in an extremely passive position without moving. Only after the enemy roam brings their jungler to mid does Goya finally get a chance to contest the wave. By then, our mid lane has already lost tempo, and the farm lane gains almost nothing because there's no resource worth fighting over. This is the difference between a single tempo roam and a multi-tempo roam. A single tempo roam only follows one teammate. A multi-tempo roam helps every role maintain tempo across the map. Deqiao is a hero designed for the latter. After the lane swap back, she misses another 2 minions, widening both her own economy gap and the team's economy gap even further. Even with the jungler sharing resources, the marksman shouldn't fall this far behind. Remember, roams also need economy. Grouping around mid here is the correct call. Deqiao and Flowborn make a very strong front-to-back combination, though this circle placement should have come a little faster. Now watch carefully. What's the next major tempo point? The 4-minute objective. With the jungler helping push this wave, we already have lane priority. Our job now is simple. Reach the objective pit before the enemy while slowing down their approach. After using skill 3 to block this brush, nothing's stopping our team from moving safely toward the pit. Our teammate has already crossed the river. Deqiao should stay here, keep controlling vision, prevent the enemy from retaking the brush, and be ready to support her teammate immediately. Instead, she leaves the area, walks around with the marksman, and comes back later. By then, the objective fight has turned back into fog of war. The enemy could already be hiding in the brush again. That severely limits your teammate's movement and makes the objective much harder to contest. This is one of the most common mistakes. Players clear a brush, but never actually hold the vision they just created. As a result, they have to clear the same brush again, and the second time is always far more dangerous than the first. Even for a composition that can start the objective at 4 minutes, it usually still needs one more round of positioning before securing it. That's why the roam matters more and more at higher levels. A roam's decisions affect every other role on the team. By now you've probably noticed that every decision we've covered is connected. They're all about syncing your tempo with your teammates. Once you understand that, the game becomes much easier to read. Now let's look at a tougher example. We'll use AG Su Lai here. The hardest part about playing an engage roam is that you're juggling multiple tempos at once. Even if your marksman is the main carry, you can't afford to stay glued to their lane all game. That's because engage roams are relatively weak during the landing phase, but become extremely powerful once skirmishes and teamfights start. Let's start from the opening. With this type of roam, it's uncommon to stay permanently paired with the marksman. Instead, we open through mid while tracking the jungler's route. The enemy mid laner is Nuwa, whose level 1 wave clear is very slow. That gives us enough time to step up, push the wave quickly, and rotate straight into the enemy jungle with our jungler. There's an anti-invade protection mechanic on the buff, so forcing the buff itself isn't the objective. We're simply pressuring the enemy jungler, denying them the space to fight comfortably around it. Now check the minimap. The enemy roam is still glued to their marksman, so we can keep applying pressure here. Even if we give up the neutral resource on the farm lane side, disrupting the enemy jungler's early tempo is a much bigger payoff. After helping mid push one more wave, we finally rotate back toward the farm lane. From here, keep watching every roll's tempo. If our jungler invades the enemy jungle, our own jungle clear naturally slows down. Normally, the roam would rotate over to speed that up. But here there's a higher priority objective. Help the farm lane freeze the wave. It's even worth trading some HP just to deny the enemy one minion. Once that's done, back off immediately. Pay close attention to the window between 1 o'clock and 1:30. Check the minimap. If the enemy mid disappears while their jungler leaves the jungle, fighting in lane becomes risky. At the same time, notice our mid laner is busy helping other teammates hold tempo. That means if the enemy mid and jungler both pressure our farm lane, our marksman is left without support. So instead of reacting after they arrive, take a defensive position in advance. Since mid is missing, we can't rely on them for vision. We create it ourselves. Hold the brush near the enemy red buff entrance. By process of elimination, if nobody walks through that entrance and nobody shows up in mid, there's a good chance they've already rotated toward the lane. Sure enough, the enemy jungler shows up, but because their jungle was invaded earlier, they're still only level 3. They're just trying to recover farm, not force a dive. As long as the enemy mid doesn't arrive, our marksman is safe. Since 3 enemies are now committed to the farm lane, we use that window to take control of mid instead, letting our mid laner rotate again, instead of leaving 2 teammates stuck on the same side of the map. The next major tempo point is the second jungle respawn. For engage roams, understanding how to pressure the enemy jungle is extremely important. Since the first invade succeeded, we look for another one if the enemy roam doesn't rotate over. This time, though, vision tells us they've already come back to defend. That changes our objective. Instead of forcing the buff through the protection mechanic, we focus on stealing the small camp before backing away. The enemy's early game composition is still strong enough that a full invade isn't worth the risk. After securing mid priority, the red buff might still look invadable. This is where a high-level concept comes in. Sometimes you pressure the red buff without actually intending to take it. The goal is simply to force multiple enemies to defend that side of the map. Once they commit, the farm lane becomes exposed. While we keep showing pressure around red, our mid laner is already free to rotate and attack the enemy marksman instead. Notice Su Lai's positioning. With so many enemies tied up defending red, he can step further forward, hold vision, interfere with their rotations, and help his teammates judge whether it's the right time to pressure the farm lane. By just 2:30, that sequence has already built up nearly a 1,000 gold lead. Once our mid laner finishes helping the farm lane, they need to rotate back to mid. The roam's job is to escort that rotation, force the enemy back, and make sure the mid laner can safely reclaim the wave. Simply holding your ultimate is often enough to discourage the enemy from contesting. After settling mid's tempo, rotate back toward the farm lane again. Later, when the mid laner moves to the top side, we take over mid ourselves, denying the enemy another 2 minions. Now we arrive at one of the most important concepts in the mid to late game, half-map vision. Whenever your marksman is clearing a side lane, they need vision covering that half of the map. For example, after securing the objective, if the marksman wants to intercept the next bottom wave, we can hold the entrance to the blue jungle and block the enemy's approach. To establish proper half-map vision, controlling a single brush isn't enough. You need 2 key positions. The brush connecting mid lane to that half of the map. The jungle exit the enemy would use to approach. Once both are secured, your marksman can safely farm the side lane. Don't just follow directly behind them to provide vision. That's a low-level habit. Instead, control the enemy's approach routes before they ever become a threat. By now, you've learned most of the core concepts. The rest comes from practice. There's still plenty more to cover, but those topics get a lot more advanced and specialized, so we'll wrap the textbook series here for now.